Hi, everyone. This is Prophetess Jessica Chalmers, and we are live from Prophecology right now, July 2020. It is most definitely intensified. So if you're not watching or if you're not a part of the Zoom, you're missing out on a lot. But don't worry, we're going to give you a recap of what happened within the first 2 hours. And right now we have Prophetess Deanna Kelly and Prophetess Jessica Jordan. And ladies, introduce yourself, give them a little bit more information as I am the newbie of the ministry. So just explain to everyone of, what prophecology is and, what is the brown rose? What does that represent?
All right. I'm Prophetess Deanna Kelly. If you see PTG, that means I am a temple guard. Prophecology is really a conclave, a prophetic conclave, a convocation of the prophets for prophets from all over the globe to come together. And this time is super special because we are now having virtual prophecology right here in our homes, connecting with each other and sharing wonderful truths, perfecting the eye and leading from the future.
And yes, Jessica Jordan here, Prophet Jessica Jordan. And I just want to piggyback off of that and say, yes, prophecology is a time where the prophets are gatherings from all across the world. We come to learn, we come to commune, certainly come to prophesy. So it is a powerful time in the Lord there. But yes, what's so amazing, as you mentioned, Prophetess Deanna, is the fact that right now we're doing this virtually. So to me, whereas I thought we were really gathering prophets from all over the world before, now I feel like we are truly gathering everyone. We are reaching in the yonders and truly grabbing everyone, all the prophets. And so it's a blessing, this opportunity actually to have this virtual prophecology, which so far has just been amazing.
Awesome. Thank you guys for explaining that. So now the first guest that we had today, or the first speaker we had, was Dr. Admiral Hoskins. She was most definitely amazing, just sharing with us of like all the health benefits and even the lack of within our community. So what was some of the pointers did you ladies get from her presentation?
So one of the biggest takeaways that I got from her presentation was the importance of our health when it comes to even our vitamin intake. Two vitamins that she mentioned that were super important for us are vitamin D and our omega-3s. And so I thought that that was so important because for me, I just had a baby recently. And one of the measures that my doctor was often looking at was my vitamin D. My midwife would come to me and she would say, your vitamin D is a little low here. And it was really important for me to keep it high. And then right after that, I just had my baby. So pandemic started and we actually started boosting our vitamin D and what have you in my last blood work. She was like, oh, your vitamin D is great because I had been boosting it. But I didn't recognize how important it was for our well-being. Vitamin D is usually, we mentioned A, C, and D, and D kind of like falls off in the background. So vitamin D was super important for us. And then looking at our health benefits, and not just how it impacts us for COVID-19, but overall looking at the Black community and recognizing even breast cancer in women and possibly being linked to low vitamin D and looking at how low vitamin D impacts our immunity. So I thought that that was one of the hugest things that stuck out to me because it's a simple thing and it's something that we all can incorporate into our lives to increase our health.
And Prophetess Jessica and Prophetess Jessica, what I found to be so amazing was the testing, the studies that vitamin D had paired with omega-3s, the effect that it had on African Americans in decreasing the risk of heart attacks by 95%, even with those who have type 1 or type 2 diabetes. That was amazing. When she shared that study, that made me think, okay, who does diabetes really hit first? The African American community. Who does cancers, breast cancer, and heart attacks hit first? African American communities. And what the master prophet, the grand master prophet, has made clear to us is that there are already studies done about food genocide, food racism, prejudice, food deserts, lack of supply, and him taking on, leading from the future, taking on the challenge of keeping up with his measures, making sure he keeps his weight within a proper range, really being fit for the future, has caused us to be able to have Dr. Admiral reveal to us the truth that we need to be out in the sun as a people, we need to take our vitamins as a people, and we need to make sure our food sources are food sources, not cardboard and plastic. And so that was so amazing to me as a granddaughter of a grandmother who had type 1 diabetes, being able to hear her speak from the medical standpoint. She was a doctor. So to hear her speaking from, you need to take your iron, you need to take your vitamin D. I'm like, okay, this is Dr. Admiral showing up in the form of my grandmother right here in Prophecology to remind me as a young African-American and Native American woman that this is something that is still relevant to today. And guess what? She revealed to us in one of the studies that when you increase your vitamin D intake and you increase your omega-3s, that it can even increase the amount of healthy births, successful births among African-American women. And so it's just so, now she did not come in our conference telling us to do certain things. She came to bring the study and came to bring information. She was not in our conference having clinicals. So I just want to be clear. But she was offering us a broader view so that we can be empowered to take our measures more seriously. And I know I had my vitamin D this morning. So I it's funny how God moves, guys. It's funny how God moves.
If I can just add something to that, I think that it's so powerful that we had her because, the Bible lets us know that our people perish for the lack of knowledge. And so what's so powerful is it's almost like she debunked and demystified a bunch of things in just that short hour when it came to our health. In the Black community, oftentimes we're led to believe that we are more prone to certain illnesses just because we are. And it makes it even sounds like certain things are beyond our control. Oh, you guys are just more likely to have this or likely to have that. And even looking at things like the fact of having stress or different things that we now even recognize that can be handled with vitamins and care as well. And so I think that it's so important to be present to and even just be educated on these matters. And we see how we actually can control our health and be not necessarily subject to just these factors that we think are outliers or outside causes, but we in fact have a lot of control of it. And so it was just so powerful to get that information, and now we can actually move and be empowered inside of it.
Absolutely. For myself, one of the points that I got from her was when she spoke about idols, how we idolize medicine, how we idolize pills, what else? We idolize supplements, doctors. And I never looked at it in that way before of idolizing these things. So when we get a headache, we take a pill. Instead of just doing natural practices or finding healthy ways to replace us having to go take medicine or go to a doctor, and just pretty much going to our source, which is, God. So asking him to heal us, prayer, and of course, all the natural resources that God has provided for us. So I thought that was something very interesting of how she said, we idolize, we worship these things where immediately we need to, take medicine or whatever it is, and just not practicing these healthy ways, just like taking a vitamin D3. Like, that's very important. That is a natural vitamin that we need to take. So I just thought that was amazing. Now after Dr. Hoskins, we had Bishop Leah Daughtry, and she is a powerful woman of God. Today was so amazing of what she spoke on, of just being educated on how to vote, how to organize to vote, and just so many other things that she said. And ladies, please share some of the points that you got out of it.
So if I may jump off here, this was such a powerful session with Dr. Leah Daughtry, and I think that was so amazing was, yes, she really laid it out on the table for us in terms of certain things that, again, demystify or taking the myth out of it when it comes to things like voting, highlighting how important it is for us to be voting in our local elections. You know, don't just wait for the presidency to come up, but we should be voting locally. We want to vote and look at the impact that it has when we begin to vote in our school boards, in our local communities, and how that then begins to trickle up. You get the things done that needs to be done. Something that she also mentioned that I think is so powerful, especially now when we start dealing with a lot of issues with voter suppression and all these different ways where they pretty much try to get around the Voting Rights Act, you know, and input little things to stop voters at the polls. And she brought up something that I thought was so powerful, which is going to be when the ministers are out at the polls. And I think that that's important because oftentimes in the church world and in ministry, the conversation of, well, how as a ministry or how as the church can we be involved in politics? And what can we do? And so I think it's so powerful to take our privilege, because you can argue that being a part of clergy possibly lends you a privilege. And so you can use that privilege now to help others and go to the polls. So rather than having them just deal with the intimidation, now you have somebody who's standing there as an advocate for them. So I also thought that that was really powerful because it highlighted, you know, something the churches could do to be of use. And then something that she touched on in her conversation, which I think was really important, was looking at our privilege. You know, oftentimes when you lack privilege in a certain area, you fail to recognize that you have privilege in other areas. And so her highlighting to us that it's important to check our privilege because there are people who may be disadvantaged at that, and looking again as a community and as the church, who's being left out, who's being left behind, how can I reach back and grab them? You know, simple things. She brought up a statistic that we probably pass and don't even think about, but the fact that so many are without the internet. So here we are, you know, all of us on Zoom and in this conference, this is a privilege. We have the privilege to having access to, we can, you know, communicate with somebody across the country or in another town or at a home right now while we are on lockdown and while we are social distancing. And so even just looking at that and looking at the little ways that we can be impactful by, number one, checking our privilege, but then also figuring out how can we also utilize that privilege to help others.
Absolutely. And ladies, we have Bishop Leah Daughtry ready here. So I'm going to bring her in and we get to ask her some juicy questions. All right. Hi, Bishop Leah Daughtry. How are you, Bishop Leah Daughtry? Can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you.
Awesome. So we have myself, Prophetess Jessica Chalmers, Prophetess Deanna Kelly, and Prophetess Jessica Jordan. We were just talking about you, about your amazing presentation. Thank you for being here at Prophecology. We truly appreciate it. And we would love to hear how your experience was doing Prophecology virtual, because you were with us last year in July or January, I believe it was January, and just now transitioning to virtual. How was that experience of doing this presentation?
It's very seamless. I do a lot of these on virtual things. I guess we all do these days. So it was a great experience. The people that come to Prophecology are wonderfully engaged. Lots of questions. So yeah, overall, a very good experience.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And Prophetess Jessica and Prophetess Deanna, did you ladies have any questions or even comments to share with Bishop Leah Daughtry?
So if I may go first, Bishop Leah, I want to thank you that when I tell you I was in the background shouting because your message began to just speak to my soul and just certainly resonates with me, and just it's such an on-time word as well. What we are looking at today, everything that's going on, if you could touch on it just ever so briefly, because it was so powerful. You talked about that we're dealing with 3 pandemics right now, and that it created the perfect circumstances, almost, I guess you could say, or the perfect storm for where we're at now. If you could just give a taste of that, because I mean, that right there was just, it was powerful, it was enlightening, and it really gave a full picture of what we're dealing with.
Sure. You know, I think we're standing at the nexus or the intersection of 3 pandemics, and we know that a pandemic is something that is of global proportion and global impact. So we've got, of course, COVID-19, which is this health crisis, which has become more than a health crisis. It's become a mental crisis, it's become an economic crisis, it's become a housing crisis. So you've got that crisis, which has also laid bare the inequities that that exist in our society. And the other, thing that we're dealing with is COVID-19, which is the impact of racism in our society, as we've seen the aftermath, certainly that led to the killings of Ahmaud Arbery and Breonna Taylor and George Floyd, and that we 400 years later, from the time African feet hit these shores, we're still dealing with this global pandemic of racism and all of its children. And then the third one is I call COVID-45, which is the impact of our president and the leadership or lack thereof that he has had throughout in dealing with the first two pandemics. So, but imagine what a different kind of leadership might have done for us and for our country if we had someone who taken it seriously from the very beginning, instead of someone who was even till today saying that it's going away soon, you don't need to wear masks, take bleach, all kind of crazy stuff. And we know it's possible. Look what has happened in New Zealand, where they have completely eradicated COVID-19 because the woman who is the prime minister took it seriously from the first day and undertook measures to ensure that she wouldn't lose thousands and thousands of her citizens. So we're at the cross section right now of COVID-19, COVID-19, and COVID-45, and how each one of these is impacting every single person's life in America, whether they know it or not.
Absolutely. Yes, go ahead, Prophetess Diana.
Bishop Leah Daughtry, you said something so profound that you brought out of Jeremiah chapter 22, verse 1-5. You spoke about what is our role, not just as a people, but as a church. And I find that most millennials are disenfranchised from the church, but not disenfranchised from the world and from the movement. And what we're always asking or requesting of the church is transparency and involvement and awareness. And I found that to be profound, because you said if we are doing what is just, if we're doing what is right, if we are walking in righteousness, that means we're proclaiming God's justice. That means we are proclaiming God's grace, and we're showing God's mercy upon we're not just asking for it, but we're actually showing it towards our fellow man. And so I find that the church and the world combines and meets right there, right in the middle of the proclamation. What do you see the future of church and of social justice and of the millennial place in the church? What do you see for the future of all of that?
Well, the millennials just I'm the last of the boomers, right? And then I think it goes Generation X, and then the millennials, and then Zs, and so I'm often reminded, because I have a nephew who's millennial, that millennials are like 30 years old now, right? So they're not these, young whippersnappers that just out wreaking havoc. These are big grown folk who have opinion, who have families, who have debt, who have, things that are real grown-up concerns in their lives, but also they are the next generation of leadership in our churches. They are the next generation of leadership in our government, who running for Congress. They are and so now what's the ones after the millennials, the Zs or the Xs or the Ys or something, whatever they are. Those are the full of energy, let's go change the world people. So I think for the millennials, it's like, I think they've now left the, when I was a child, I spoke as a child phase of their lives, right? They grown now. And they bringing a level of thoughtfulness through the lens of being the first generation that had access to this much technology. They don't know what it's like to not have a phone, or to not be on the internet. When I grew, I mean, the internet was new for us. We had to learn how to use a phone and learn what you could do all of this on the phone. You know, we just didn't have, what do you mean? We had beepers, right? And I'm old enough to remember when you didn't even have a beeper. When beepers came out, we're like, oh, a beeper. So, you know, you've got this generation now that will be assuming the leadership of the church and church movements, who understand what it is to have all of this magic at your disposal. Magic for my generation is normal for you, and who therefore can think about direction, about content, about delivery in a way that my generation does not think about it or has to learn how to think about it. So it's very exciting. So the question is, how do we make sure those of us who are the elders in the church that they're grounded? And because everything about old church is not wrong, right? There are some foundational things about old church which should be passed down, which should be handed down, which should be part of new church. How do we make sure those two things go together, and that we're walking side by side as this transition to leadership takes place, so nothing gets lost, that the lessons are handed down. I learn new things, you learn new things. We walk together and preserve the history while we're creating a new future.
Amen. Thank you so much. And something that you said about the voters education, voters organized, and even when you mentioned, what I got out of what you shared about Colin Kaepernick is that if you don't vote, you don't have a right to say anything. I thought that was powerful.
That's just basic. If you have an opportunity to participate and you choose not to, for whatever your reason is, then you don't get to come back later and say, well, y'all shouldn't have chose the color red. I would have chose blue. Well, then you should have voted for blue. Because maybe if you had voted for blue, it would be blue. So you don't get to now come back because I stood on a line and I made a way to get myself registered, and I did the sacrifice, which is what voting is. You got to take your time. Listen, our country doesn't make it easy. So now I've done that. Now you want to complain later? I don't have time for that. I don't. Who has time for that? You have an opinion, speak it. And I think particularly for the current generations, and this is what baffles me, can share an opinion about anything on social media. They on IG, now not so much on Facebook, but okay, let's say Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, with an opinion about everything. There is no subject where they don't have an opinion. But when it comes to expressing your opinion on election day, then you don't want to do that. You will impact more people on election day expressing your opinion than most of us will impact with a TikTok video. The impact is deeper and wider. And so I always say, but you got an opinion, so let's hear it. And when you choose to sit out of the process, what you're saying is that your opinion doesn't matter. Because all voting is an opinion. You sharing your opinion with the world. And when you say, I ain't voting, you telling me your opinion doesn't matter. And if your opinion, you don't want me to listen to your opinion about this, then why should I listen to your opinion about anything else? So let's align. So I think part of our job as church folks is to help people get in alignment with their lives. Now, of course, our ultimate alignment is the word, the will, and the way of God. But I think we need to try to help people make sense of you're not in alignment here. You saying one thing on TikTok, you big and you the biggest, you the baddest, you the boldest, you the blackest, you the, but on election day, you like, I don't matter. Well, which is it? That's out of alignment. And if you're out of alignment in one area of your life, you're probably out of alignment in other areas of your life. And nothing's going to line up for you until all of who you are, body, mind, heart, soul, is in alignment and in agreement with each other. And then that's when blessings fall, when you have internal agreement about your purpose, about your plan, about your business, or whatever it is. And so part of our challenge is to help people get in alignment.
If I may, I have one other question. So in this conversation about voting, I often do hear, especially now that we got to the point, Bernie Sanders is no longer a candidate. And so now we're in the conversation of a lot of people going, well, Joe Biden is evil, or he's this, or he's that, or he's the other thing. And they're falling back into the conversation now of similar to what you said at Kaepernick did, where it becomes, well, I'm going to hold back my vote because this person isn't right, or this person doesn't have what I want in mind. You said something, you brought up that there is no perfect candidate. And so I guess what I want to ask you, and you kind of touched on it, but what I want to ask you is how important really is it for the people in this next upcoming election to almost, I don't know if we would say, put aside your certain beliefs or try to find the common ground such that we can move forward versus harboring on, should we vote for a third party person? What's that conversation? So what would you say? How could you equip us so that when somebody says something like that to us, we can come back to them with an intelligent, immediate answer to kind of get them to move in alignment?
So the question is, what is your vision for your life? For the lives of the people that you love, for the lives of the people in your community? Does 4 more years of Trump get you that? Right? Biden may be an unknown quantity, but we know what Trump's gonna do. Now, there are some people, Diamond and Silk, they happy with Trump. And so they good with 4 more years of him. And that's the decision that they will make. For where I come from, if this is what he's done in 4 years, when he has to run again, what's he gonna do when he don't have to run again? There is no construct to me where that makes sense. Now, unless Satan is coming from hell with some horn, unless Joe Biden grows some horns and a tail, in my seeing, he can't be worse than Trump. It just can't. So when I think about my communities, my family, my young nephews who are 15 and 12, and I think about the senior citizens on the block or the older folk, I say, what will their lives be like with 4 more years of what we got? Can I go ahead and take the chance that Biden won't be as bad? Listen, ain't no perfect candidates unless you're gonna run yourself. And even then, you probably don't agree with yourself on some things. I live by myself. It was me, myself, and I in this house. And some days I went on strike last week. I'm like, who the devil put all these dishes in the sink? Like, why do dishes keep appearing? I'm in here by myself and can't agree what time I'm going to the exercise. So why do we expect policy perfection from other people? Why do we expect any kind of perfection from other people that we don't require from ourselves? There is not going to be anybody who's going to 100% align with you on anything. The thing is, who is closest than the other person? Who will get you the closest? It's politics. You're not going to get everything. That's just the way, welcome to life. You're not going to get everything. There's no perfect boss. There's no perfect workplace. There's no perfect anything. Who is going to get me closest to my aspirations and our dreams, not just for me? Because I could probably, I don't like him, but I believe God and I believe the Lord will take care of me in 4 more years of Trump. But I worry about the seniors. I worry about my nephews in student loan debt. I worry about my big nephew in student loan debt. Maybe, but I already know Trump ain't gonna do nothing about that because he said so. Biden's a maybe. I'm gonna go with the maybe. I'll take the maybe over the hell no.
Bishop Leah, you said something about social media. You said in the beginning, we've got to watch how we use social media. Are we going to use it as a false idol? Are we going to be on it, dedicated, committed to it, and all of its nonsense? Or are we going to use it as a tool? And lately, I've been seeing random things across some of my old friends' user accounts, taking on fake news, false things about Joe Biden, and all of these other people connected to the Clintons. And I'm like, when do we mute when do we mute the lies, and when do we start getting connected? Because this is not what is going to empower us to make proper decisions for ourselves. So I was so grateful for you sharing that there's a group that can get us more information. Those of us that are attached to ministries, committed to our ministries. You gave us the website blackchurchpac.org. That's blackchurchpac.org. And I went briefly while you were talking and saw all of the resources you had available. I'm excited to share. I just want to say thank you, because you opened my eyes to a world of materials that I can now put up, things that are now fact, movements that actually work, movements that empower us instead of just make entertainment out of our livelihood. Thank you so much.
Yes. And if you follow us on social, blackchurchpac.org, particularly on Instagram, we always have up different videos, very short clip videos. We do Spotify playlists, so you got a little music happening, and then we advertise people's Bible studies that they're having. So if you're looking for a word, here's who's having Bible study this week that you can tune into. So we're not a ideological church group. We support anybody that's preaching the gospel, and you can find something for you, but we want people mainly to have the information. Get smarter. Listen, when we on there trying to find out the last thing Cardi B did, we check 14 sources before we decide which one is the right one. I don't know why we get on social media, read one article about Hillary Clinton and some pizza thing and decide that that's the gospel truth. We need to use the same tools when we trying to find out what Cardi B and Rihanna and this latest one with Jada Smith and Will and all. We be reading 14 sources. Go get you some more sources so you can be smarter about things and that you're not passing along something that's just totally incorrect. Because that's the worst thing. When you post an article and you find out it's not true, then you got to try to take it down and all. Just read, get some confirmation to your facts. Think for yourself, get some information, and then make your own decisions.
Thank you so much, Bishop Leah Daughtry. This was amazing. Thank you for just shedding so much light to us. And we do got to get back to the conference. Yes. So thank you once again for being here. And it was a pleasure. We will see you soon.
Absolutely. Have a great day.
You too. Bye.
Take care. Be blessed.